Okay, so this was an idea I came up with last night while tending my pepper garden. Is it going to be good? I guess we'll find out. This is talking about if other Straw Hats were the main character of One Piece. So sorry, Luffy, I know you've been doing this for a while, 20-something years, Kaizokuoni, Oriwanar, all that crap, but I think it's time to take a back seat. Let's see what Zoro has to offer. Alright, so Zoro's story would be pretty much the same as Luffy's. You know, Luffy wants to be king of the pirates, Zoro wants to be the greatest swordsman in the world. Traveling from island to island, battling strong swordsmen. We would get a lot more information about Meito grades, probably. We would find out more about that stuff, like in every arc. We would probably see a new enemy that has a new ranked sword. Zoro and Tashigi could have a romance subplot, I don't know. The problem is that One Piece is going around 950-something chapters right now. Zoro's series would probably be at least 4 times as long, because every single arc he would get consistently lost wherever he was going. He could land on an island and, you know, the townspeople would tell him, oh, right up there, on top of that one solitary hill on the entire island, there is a castle. And on the very top of that castle, there is a very strong swordsman. And it would probably take Zoro a good 40 chapters before he managed to get up to the top of the castle. Nobody was trying to stop him. There's not like guards or anything. If they were, Zoro could just cut him down. And then, you know, the end of the arc is just Zoro defeating the swordsman very easily and then going on to the next island. So, you know, the series would probably be like 3,000 chapters by the time you were done with it, but Zoro would eventually achieve it. The main enemy of the story would be Dracul Mihawk in this instance. So the premise of Nami's story, this would be basically the same deal where she's at the beginning of One Piece, going around the East Blue, stealing pirates' gold, swindling people so she can get enough money to buy back Kokoyashi Village. Except in this case, it wouldn't just be like a single saga, okay? This would be her entire story, okay? Saving up enough money, and then eventually, I would like to think, fighting against Arlong. So just stretch the story out a little bit longer so she can travel around and get stronger and eventually go back to Kokoyashi and just defeat Arlong, like her main enemy herself. That would be really cool, right? And I think the best way for really to handle this is, you know, like a story like Rise of the Shield Hero, where there's characters that you just absolutely hate, people that are like the worst ever to the MC, and you just wish they would get punished. Every story arc would be like this. Nami would join up with a pirate crew that would just be doing horrible acts all over the East Blue, like, we're going to steal an island away from a bunch of orphans and make them work in the mines, you know? And then Nami would join that crew, and we get to find out just how horrible these people are, and at the end of every single story arc, Nami would just steal all their money and leave them, like, tied to a post or something to be eaten by sharks or something, and then she would just sail away smiling, and then you know, next story arc, and then that would be just wash, rinse, and repeat. Every story arc, she would keep running into progressively worse people until finally, after she gathered up enough money and enough training and all that stuff, she would head back to Kokoyashi, where we would see Arlong as, of course, the worst out of all of the bunch, and then she would take him down, freeing her entire village from his rule, and everyone lives happily ever after, I guess. A story based entirely around Usopp would be godly, alright? And I don't even mean that to be joking around. Now, the premise would be Usopp just living in Syrup Village. Nothing would change about that. Except, he would go to Kaya's place every day and tell her a story about high adventure. And there's your story arcs. Every story arc would just be a different adventure told from Usopp's perspective, where he's this great hero going out in the world fighting against giant Godzilla monsters and defeating them with his pinky or something, right? And so, at the end of every story arc, it would just be like cutting back to the boring little farm village where Usopp grew up, but the next story arc would be even more intense. They would just get more and more and more ridiculous, to the point where Usopp was like defending the entire planet from aliens, and the next one after that would him be journeying the stars and fighting against giant cosmic creatures the size of galaxies, and the one after that would him be going into like a singularity and like defeating a black hole somehow, and then the next one would be him getting sucked into a universe where it's populated entirely by, I don't know, giant snakes, and how he tamed all of the giant snakes, and the next one is he literally becomes the deity of all universes, and it just keeps scaling up and up and up and up and up like that. And the end of the story would be Usopp embarking on the greatest adventure ever, because the last story arc, he tells like the epic adventure of how he became the god of everything, and Kaya, after listening to these stories after like every single day, she's just like, you know what, Usopp, come into my bedroom. and then Usopp and Kaya embark on a rather the most exciting adventure of all, if we're being honest, which I think is how One Piece's character of Usopp is going to end. That's how everything's going to be wrapped up, you know? He's eventually going to return to Syrup Village at one point, rocking the goatee and the washboard abs, and after journeying the new world, and I think Kaya's gonna have a present for him. You know what I mean? Alright, so yeah, Usopp's would be so much fun, though. Oh, Sanji's is easy. It would just be Shokugeki no Soma, except it would have a fulfilling ending. Okay, that's not fair. I've actually never read Shokugeki no Soma beyond, like, the 3rd chapter, but I've just heard from people the ending wasn't really the best, okay? I'm more of a Toriko fan myself. So here's the way I see this happening, okay? The first few arcs of Sanji's story would just be him at the Baratier, getting to know the character, you know? It would have a heavy focus on food, learning how all the different kind of, like, cooking techniques that Sanji knows. How do you cook fish? How do you cook meat? How do you make sauces? All that kind of jazz, right? And you would also pepper some scenes in there of Sanji beating the crap out of some, customers that refuse to eat his cooking or, waste food or anything like that, just to show he's not to be messed with, okay? So maybe 2 or 3 story arcs like that. Eventually, after we get to know the character, we get to know his dream, he sets out into the world on his own to find the All Blue, except he has a bunch of cook rivals that meet up with him, like Carmen from the Logtown filler, where there was that cooking contest where he won the elephant tuna. Remember that? Like, people like that. Also, I was just throwing this out there, it's possible we can also make this into a harem story somehow. Don't know exactly how it's gonna fit in, it's just basically a subplot, but we can maybe fit that in somewhere, right? And so we could have a lot of fun with this, Sanji traveling the world, right? And it's like, when the Sea Kings attack like the Sunny or something right now in the story, it's not a big deal. Like, Zoro slices it up, Frankie shoots it, Sanji cooks it, not a big deal. But no, in this story, like, we would see a Sea King coming out of the water, Sanji kicks the crap out of it, and then we would see the whole process on what makes Sea King meat so delicious and how he makes the food, right? The final arc would be at the All Blue. Sanji finally arrives there, but all the other cooks arrive there as well. And there's just one giant cooking competition to, prove who got there first or who deserves to be the first person to really claim that they discovered the All Blue, right? Whoever makes the most delicious food out of it. So the last arc is, Sanji using all these delicious food that we found out about from the, the story into this amazing dish. And it just blows everybody's socks off, okay? And then that's how the story ends, right? The enemies are, I guess, the other cooks or, just the animals that he attacks. I'm thinking more Toriko vibes than Shokugeki no Soma vibes here, but that's just me because I really like Toriko. Why, it's a medical drama, of course. Chopper is a traveling doctor in a world that doesn't understand him, and every chapter we learn about a new disease or a new cure that Chopper develops, or how, different surgeries work, or maybe surgeries that Chopper has to invent for a particular patient, stuff of that nature. There's a very little-known manga called Asclepios, and it's about a traveling doctor back during the Protestant Reformation, okay? And so you have this surgeon that knows how to perform these acts of miracles to cure people, but it's in a time where people don't understand that. And I think that would kind of fit a little bit in Chopper. Let me paint the first chapter of this story for you, okay? You don't know what Chopper looks like yet. It's just, maybe he's traveling the world wearing a disguise, a cloak, or a mask or something to hide his true, human, Yeti appearance, right? And so he enters the town, and there's some sick people in the town, and, he's known far and wide as the mysterious, traveling doctor, this huge dude. Nobody's seen his face, right? And the big reveal at the end of the chapter is that he's not even a human. He's going around saving humans with his medical expertise, but he himself is shunned by modern society. Like, he walks into the town and heals everybody, but then after his real face is revealed, everyone looks at him like a monster, and so he just leaves for the next town, and Chopper's sad. He's just like, oh, it happened again. Oh, well, I'm just gonna keep traveling and keep making the world a better place as much as possible. So you could have a whole story arc about that. How it's like, he's viewed as a monster from everybody's perspective, but he's still doing good. The monster is more human than the humans. There's your whole gist right there. The enemies of Chopper's story would basically just be the humans that are trying to hunt him or, just basically have his head as a trophy. Look what I caught last night, But in reality, he is, of course, going to be recognized at the end as the good person that he is, and he's going to be vindicated and everything, and the end of the story would be him teaching his medical knowledge to other students or of something of that nature. I can feel it being a very heart-wrenching tale, Chopper's perspective. Now, Robin's story would be pretty depressing as well, but more than anything, it would be all about the lore, all about the world building. This would be my favorite. Imagine a One Piece story where the backstory of each island, or the civilizations that came before, or the history books, all of that was the focus. I love me some geography, and I love me some world building, okay? And that's what all it would be about. Robin travels to a different island in every arc, and we learn a little bit more. Like, every arc is a little puzzle piece, adding to the grand scope of what the One Piece world really is. Every island, there's like, oh, there are these ruins of this old civilization, so we find out all about that. Next island, we find out about another civilization that maybe connects back to the last one. History regarding the Shandorians, the Moon People, where people even came from in One Piece. What about the origin of the ancient weapons? The Void Century, of course, would be the final arc, learning all about that. So that's kind of the same as in this One Piece story. But still, that would be the focus, okay? We would get to see and hear and learn so much about the One Piece world from Robin's perspective. Now, you could either do this when she was a little girl running away from the world government and learning a little bit as it goes, or you could just start with her as an adult traveling around. It would be a little less sad if we did it that way, because, Robin is just a little girl traveling around. Like, the first arc with her just be like in an island. We don't know anything about her yet, and she's studying things, and we just think the manga is about a little girl that's interested in the history of the world. And then the end of that arc, all of a sudden, like, an entire battleship shows up and starts storming the island, burning things down, trying to get to her. And we'd be sitting there like, whoa, what the hell's going on with this girl? Who is she? And then we could do it that way. Like, things about the Devil Child are unfolding as we go about it. So it wouldn't start off on Ohara. It would start off with her traveling. Or we could just have her, like I said, as an adult traveling that way. At least she would be able to get around a lot better. But yeah, Robin's would probably be my favorite. Not just because she's my favorite female character, but also just so much lore, so much world building. It would just be palpable. It would be like a Togashi info dump every chapter, but I'd be fine with that. Also, we would get like 95% more of Robin's boobs in every panel, so I personally think Frankie's would also be one of my favorites, okay, because he's an engineer. I'm feeling a lot of, like, Dr. Stone vibes from this, like, every story arc, Frankie would describe a new type of ship, or how you build it, or something like that, like a new kind of equipment. We would go into detail with his cyborg body. So Frankie would still be Frankie, but he would have these moments where he would get really serious and, like, explain, okay, this is the keel of a ship, and this is why it's so important, and this is how you build a proper vessel, or this is the reason why, this ship is different from this ship. Like, he would go into detail on, like, the specs and the analysis and the blueprints of all this stuff, but at the end of it, he would still strike a pose and be like, ow, that's why it's a super vessel, and we would learn more about his cyborg body and all stuff like that. Honestly, Frankie, just the way he is by nature, you could have, like, an entire story arc of him just wandering around Water 7, and, like, people come up to him, and, they give him some attitude, and he just beats the crap out of them, or we get a little bit more of intrigue into the Frankie family, how that works and stuff like that, his backstory with Tom. So yeah, I mean, you might have to bend it around a little bit because he's a dismantler in the One Piece story. You can maybe make it like he's just another kind of shipwright, but maybe he only builds ships for pirates. I don't know exactly. Like, that would actually work, following in Tom's footsteps. Frankie is kind of like on the fringe of Water 7, so he does things a little differently than Galila. But yeah, it would be a much more scientifically rooted, or I guess an engineering kind of rooted story from Frankie's perspective. But Frankie would still be Frankie. Plus, every story arc, we would get different Speedos. I don't know what this says about me as a person, but this was my first idea. First thing that popped into my head for Brooke's story. If an entire manga was focused around Brooke, okay? It would take place, like, the story would start when he's alive. All right? And it would be the most similar to current One Piece. Yorkie's the captain, Brooke is like his first mate, and they would just travel the seas and have adventures. And Laboon would be there, and it would just be a really good-natured pirate adventure story. Like, they land on an island, there's a crazy adventure, they would find a treasure, they would befriend the people there, they get back on the ship, Laboon would be there, and we're talking, like, I want to say a good at least 300 or 400 chapters of just continuing that recipe. Like, nobody dies, everybody's just happy, and everyone's having a good time, And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, the last chapter, like, I want this to be like a train just boom, just hitting a wall. You know, like we had 400 chapters of just a good-natured, happy, fun time with Brooke and his crew. And the very, very last chapter, let's say the second to last chapter ended with them arriving at an island, and this was like the greatest treasure they'd ever found, and they were all together, and they all made it through the end of their adventure. Nobody died. And the second to last chapter is then just opening up the chest to see what they could get. And then that chapter ends, and the next week the last chapter is released. And the last chapter has Brooke waking up aboard the ghost ship in the Florian Triangle as a skeleton surrounded by the corpses of his best friends. And the previous 399 chapters were a dream that he was having, or multiple dreams that he was having, when his friends were still alive. And he's just adrift in the Florian Triangle. All alone. End of series. It would be like, imagine if Fairy Tail did that. Fairy Tail, how long was Fairy Tail? 500-600 chapters, something like that. You know, no major deaths in the Fairy Tail Guild. Imagine if, like, at the very last chapter, Acnologia just killed everybody. And Natsu, like, stood up and he's, like, holding, like, everyone's dead, but no! And then that's how it ended. That's the kind of feeling that I want from this. But if that's too dark for you, I don't know. Just Brooke traveling around the world becoming a rock star, we would learn about music. But I like my first idea a lot better. Funko, please get to making a Jinbei pop, because he is 100% a Straw Hat. While you're at it, also throw in a Carrot Straw Hat as well. Not because she's confirmed, but just, I mean, like, if you're gonna release a Jinbei pop, you might as well release a Carrot pop, right? I mean, obviously. Alright, Jinbei's would be amazing, because it would be the entire One Piece story told from the perspective of a fishman, of an outsider of the surface world. Somebody whose race has been just the subject of huge prejudice and discrimination for hundreds of years. The enemies would be humans, or the Tenryubito if you want to be specific. You could include Jinbei growing up in Fishman Island. Maybe he did something very similar to what Hody and what Arlong did. Maybe Jinbei went to the surface as a little kid and was walking around the Sabaody, like looking at the amusement park, and it's almost so much fun, but then he got like kicked or beaten down by humans, and he didn't understand why. And so then you could have his adventures on Fisher Tiger's crew from a whole new perspective, okay? It would be like, yeah, we find out about the fishmen pretty early on in One Piece at the Arlong Park arc, but this would be starting off with it. Okay, so you would start off by looking at how the fishmen are pretty cool, and then you would see the humans and how they treat them for no real reason other than the fact that they just, they have gills, their skin's like, blue or whatever. Like you would really learn to, appreciate the fisherman side of things early on, and then eventually you could have the story be like Jinbei runs across some humans that he doesn't trust at first, but then they do turn out to be cool with him. Alright? And then Jinbei teams up with those humans and tries to change the nature of the entire world. That, I think, would be probably the most real out of all of these stories. Okay, Jinbei's tale would be definitely dark. It would be extremely depressing at times. You could even have a story arc where it's like Jinbei first meets some humans that he thinks he can trust, and then they betray him in some way until he meets the good group of people. All right, there's just so many ways you could do this, and to look at it from their perspective, like those that have been discriminated against for so long, it would be a really real kind of thing. A lot of parallels. I mean, there's parallels with Fishmen to modern society as well, but this would just be overt. It would be all over the place. So yeah, pretty powerful story. All right, I don't know if that was good or not. It was probably a much shorter video, but it was just an idea that I had, and I was thinking I could do this with some other series. I could do this with Bleach, like what if Rukia or Renji was the main character of Bleach? I could do this with Yu-Gi-Oh! What if Joey Wheeler was the main character of Yu-Gi-Oh? I think there's potential here, but let me know what you think below, and let me know about some other takes you could have on if, it's like Brooks or Zoro's story in One Piece, how it would be a little different. And I might even do another episode on One Piece, because there's some other characters I could think would make good main character material, you know what I mean? Alright, well anyway, hope you guys enjoyed whatever this was. Have a great one. Tekking, signing out.